And that should be it recording now. Okay, welcome to this week's community call. We've got 4 UMIPs up for discussion this week. 1 omnibus, 2 collateral adds, and 1 KPI options. We'll just take them in order if that's okay. Let me just share my screen and we will start. Okay, the first one is pull request 309, which is DFX as collateral. All the issues for this one seem to be resolved prior. Anyone got any further issues with this one or anything needing to be discussed? Oops.
I'm hopping out and Kim's out on skateboard. Okay, never mind. I'm hopping out and Kim's out on skateboard.
Okay.
It looks good to me. The final fee checks out. It's a little bit above $400, and yeah, so I think it's good.
Yep, there were some comments left, but they seem to have been addressed in advance. So everyone's happy with 309.
I am.
Excellent. So that one is good to go. The next one is to create the BASK basket DAOs KPI options. Now, there was actually a little bit of issue with this one because the file didn't actually go up correctly. The actual content is still in the early stage UMIPs up in discourse. We had some discussion about this one earlier last week, thinking about how it could be implemented and some possibilities for some changes that are coming up. Do we have JJC on the call? Because it was JJC that wrote it, or anyone that wants to speak to it. No? Hax, have you been involved in the writing of this one?
Yeah.
Are you in touch with Basket DAO and had any involvement in the discussions behind it?
Yes. They left us, so they want, I left what they had said up in discourse in the early review. They basically want this to go until December, the KPI option. And it was pretty, one was going to follow the BASK. I can't remember offhand, and I don't have any notes on it, but one was going to follow the BASK if it was over the BDPI. And then the other one was if BASK just reached a certain level. I think it was like, I can't remember what it was, but that was the basic what they wanted to do. And I think it just ended up being a big monster because of the fact of some of the language that's in there, and us not exactly understanding fully what they wanted to do until the very end. The first one that was written, I think JJC just tried to fix that, and that did not go as well. So that's why we ended up with this one here. And then there was just a lot of confusion with we have to make another price identifier for the flipping token. Is that correct?
Well, I think the one that was up there was actually if the BASK BDI had a higher market cap than the DPI, which is an equivalent index token. Originally, there was also a payout if BASK was over $1,000, but this seems to have been dropped in the latest iteration. Sean, John Chandler and I had a bit of a chat about this on Friday, and we had some ideas about how it might be a bit more elegantly implemented and it would make it a bit easier. And also we were just going to chat about some of the design issues. We felt that perhaps it wasn't the most motivational, and that there might be better ways of implementing it that would be more motivational for the basket community. John, Sean, Chandler, does any of you want to kind of reiterate the chat that we had previously?
Sure. Yeah, I guess like the main question we had was around like if this was actually supposed to be like a binary option, because the way it read was like if the basket DAO TVL was higher than the DPI TVL, then it would pay out like a certain amount, but if not, then it seemed like it was paying out zero. Or if like the payout was supposed to be like a function of the ratio between the two. So that was like one confusing part. And also if it was just supposed to be like, you know, if that condition was ever met over the life cycle of the contract, or just like at expiry. Yeah, so I guess those were our main questions, if I remember correctly. And I think we were leaning towards the fact that it would probably work a lot better if the payout was something between 0 and 1 basket DAO tokens, and that was determined by like the ratio of the basket DAO market cap to the DPI market cap, instead of having some sort of like binary option structure.
Yeah, maybe just to add a couple points to that, Sean. We chatted about various options on what we were interpreting this UMIP to. Like what was the end product that was going to be created from it, and what objective did the basket team want from it? And I think it'll be helpful for us to understand a bit more on what the team want to use this product for, so that we can actually kind of lean in which direction we should kind of take the UMIP into.
Yeah.
So when I talked to them about that, they just seemed like they wanted to get the KPI options up and running, just to try them to see how they would work, and that they wanted an all or nothing. I kind of tried to explain them how what you just said there, as far as binary is it paying out at least a little bit, and that was kind of the answer that I got, was that they asked if they could go all or nothing. So like if it works, great, they get something. If it doesn't, then they expire worthless. It seemed to me that they were more eager on getting it going to see how this round would work, because they were also interested in some KPI option or call options and some other things to go along with this. And I think it was more of, I guess, kind of from what I gathered from them, it was, well, we'd like to get these up as soon as possible, and if they work, that's so they wanted to be able to show their community exactly how they would work with them in place, I guess, is kind of how they explained it to me, is how they wanted to do that. So
And I guess one takeaway we had, if it's going in the binary options route, is that it might be simpler to use the, sorry, my cat's crawling all over the place. It might be easier to use the yes or no identifier that's in a draft stage, because it is just a question like either did the market cap exceed the DPI market cap at expiry or at some point before expiry, like one or the other would be the question that you would ask through ancillary data. And then you wouldn't need to have a specific identifier for this KPI option. You could just say like, did it exceed the market cap of DPI? Yes or no? And you could also use that for like other KPI options where it's like, did it exceed this level? Yes or no? That kind of thing. And that would simplify it.
So by doing the binary price identifier like you guys are talking, then we won't have to deal with all the price feed and stuff like that, because it will be all ancillary data. Is that correct? So it's not needed. It doesn't need a price feed to get that answer, yes or no.
Right, because you wouldn't. It would only be at expiry that you're worried about it, and it's just a question that you would ask then, like, did it exceed this level either at expiry or at some point before expiry, depending on what the actual question is, and then you get the answer to it.
But I'm not yet clear. What is the place where this question is, the format of this question is structured and defined? Are there like some standard how to structure this question in ancillary data?
I think that this is based on the idea that you would either answer, well, actually, you know what? This might, now that I think about it, this might not work perfectly. Are you pulling up the draft for it? Because,
yeah.
Because this one would be like an augur style identifier that pays out 0 if the answer is no, or 1 if the answer is yes, but would pay out 0.5 if the answer is undecidable. So if you ask a question and it goes to the DVM because of a dispute and the voters say that this question is unanswerable, we can't find the market cap for these two things, we don't know, they would answer, you know, invalid or undecidable or whatever. Or they would return 0.5 as the price to basically say like, we can't decide it, which actually isn't the outcome that you would want in this case, because that would give a payout. So maybe it doesn't work for that, but it's just something to consider. Because I do think that this would be decidable. I don't think that you would get a 0.5. Like, I think you can look at it and, you know, you can define it as rigorously as you want, but like the outcome should be determinable just from the natural language question. And if you scroll down, you can kind of see an example question. I think it's like, who won a game or something. So just like those kind of right?
Sports.
Yeah, like a sports question. It's like, you can find out whether they did or not, or if like the finals didn't happen yet, then you could say like 0.5, you know, there's no way that we can answer this question. It didn't happen.
Okay, but theoretically, this could be like forked in a way that this 0.5 is not an issue. For example, if you can't find it, then you already preemptively like decide either it's going to be 0 or 1 in the case where you cannot find the data. So probably not this specific version fits for this particular purpose, but if this is like amended to some extent, that if there's as a like second version of this binary query, that it's either 0 or 1, and that's it. There's no other answer.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess you could do that, where you would just say like return 0 if the answer can't be determined. It would also just be 0. That would be the main change, and that would just be like a specialized version of this. But either way, it keeps it really simple. It's a yes or no question ultimately, and you know, it probably saves some amount of work in strictly defining it, because this is an answerable question. It's not something that like it can't be answered.
And that would really come about at the consensus at settlement time.
Yeah.
There's no real reason why the consensus should settle on undeterminable answer. So if they are very keen on having a binary all or nothing thing, this UMIP, which should go in for next week's pull request or next week's UMIP cycle, would actually cover this basket DAO case and would be, you know, it would save you doing another KPI option. Now, Sean, there was actually 2 questions that they wanted to ask, because it paid out either if it was over 1,000. Has that been dropped now? Are you up to date with the?
No, it's still the same. If the one beats the other, then that one KPI option will pay out. And then if BASK itself reaches that certain level, then that KPI option will pay out. And if neither make it, then boom. And that's great that you guys are doing this, because I think that was some of the confusion. Just the language in this one, because there is 2 involved, and one was following, you know, one was tracking the other, and the other was tracking itself, kind of deal. So I think that was a big part of getting the language right in that part. So then we would just need the price identifier for BASK, correct? Which will be in the omnibus next week. And then the collateral is later on. And then this one would be a binary, and then that would cover all their KPI options as long as we put that language in the binary UMIP.
So it wouldn't even need to go into the binary UMIP. It would just be a yes or no question. So it would go into the actual question you ask when submitting the price request. So you would say the price identifier is binary query, or like binary query 0 if invalid, if there's like a slightly modified version of it. And then the ancillary data would say like question : did such and such happen? So you would use the same identifier, and you wouldn't have to update the identifier. You just have to ask a question that is going to get, you know, an answer and is decidable.
Awesome. Okay. Can you guys like write that all down for us and like send it?
Sure.
Would
Yeah.
that be cool?
Yeah. I also like the binary query identifier also, I think, needs to go through some review, because I think there are still some questions around, like, for potentially like complicated things like this, like how appropriate it is to actually use it, or if it would just like make more sense for the contract deployer to like define an explicit way to calculate the market caps for these things. But yeah, we can talk through that, Hags.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's pretty much it on that. Then it's just a matter of us getting the right things in order and the right everything so that it makes sense. Right?
I think so.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting point, because I don't think we had considered this in too much detail for KPI options. So it sounds like we might want to have 2 price identifiers in the binary UMIP, and one is just like 0 if invalid or something.
I think you could even do like more clever things with like a generalized KPI options UMIP, where not only do you like pass in like the conditions of payouts, but you also pass in the payouts themselves. So you could have, I mean, you could also do this within a financial product library, but you can have like multiple conditions associated with a KPI options price identifier. You could also like potentially pass in like defined methodologies, as well as like yes or no questions, where we might have like one TVL KPI options price identifier that like defines how to get like the TVL for, say, like a certain subset of Ethereum based projects. And then you could just say like, I want this TVL, and I also want to check to see if, you know, the BASK price was ever over $1,000. I don't know, just kind of spitballing, but I think we could do some cool things with ancillary data.
I think the best at the minute is really to just withdraw this one, but we'll keep it up in the discourse and we can discuss it there. So somebody can write a comment basically suggesting that we use the binary data one to address this KPI option, and we can take it from there. Does that sound good to you, Sean?
That sounds great to me. Me, Sean, or the other Sean?
Oh, no, you, Sean. Sorry. It is confusing having two Seans.
Sounds good to me also. So we have double Sean confirmation.
All right, good deal. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. So that one is withdrawn in favour of potential use of binary option UMIP. Okay. The next one we had was BASK as a collateral type. There were a few minor issues with this one. What was this? What, 314? There we go. Nothing too serious, I don't think. There was some minor formatting issues. There was some debate over final fee, whether it should be 4, whether it should be 5. And Rainis, I think you asked for additional info on the market cap, circulating supply, and the distribution schedules. So we have it up here. The formatting issues are just small edits really that needs done. There's a discourse link missing. So really the only substantive issue is the final fee, whether it should be 4, whether it should be 5, whether we split the difference. Thoughts?
I thought I went in and fixed all. I put it at 4. And I somewhere in there, there's a pull request where I thought I fixed all that stuff.
Oh, okay. I don't think it's showing up at the minute. But you're quite happy to change it to 4.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, then in that case, it's just minor formatting edits. I don't actually see the edits up there, but we can help you work through any issues there are with that.
Yeah, somewhere I fixed it, and I have a I have a pull request somewhere with this all fixed. I don't know how to probably get it re-pulled up. I can
Hags,
try and do that real quick, but
we can talk about it. They're all like minor things, and yeah, we can work through fixing it on GitHub.
okay.
But
Sounds good.
I just suggested 4 because 5 was just higher than what most of our final fees are, or what we try to set them to. It was around it was over 600 USD. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I went back and did that. I put the 4 there. I added some things in motivation, I believe, for liquidity and the other thing. And I think I went and made all the spaces in between BASK and DAO. So, or basket and DAO. So.
Okay. So that one is go minor edits. So that is a go with minor edits and conditional on the final fee change to 4 BASK. Are we good with that?
Yep.
Good. Okay, the next one is an omnibus price identifier. I don't seem to have got that one up. Let me just get it up quickly. There were a few issues with this one, nothing too serious as I recall. Oops. there was a few issues around the median where the price feeds referred to the mean, but the implementation referred to the median. There was also some issues around TWAPs, where sometimes it was specified in some places 30 minutes or 15. And also there was a couple of places where the TWAP hadn't been taken into account in implementation. Would somebody like to speak to the omnibus?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I saw the feedback that got posted. I think it was earlier today, but I work until 5 p.m. here, so I haven't had a chance to address that feedback yet. I'm on my lunch break right now. So yeah, I hadn't done one of these before. I offered to do the price identifier, so I had just basically inherited a lot of the language that already existed on. There was a proposal, I think it was 294. I had you close it. So I just tried to reuse as much of that as possible. So I don't know. Should it be using the median or the mean? I assumed it should be doing an average price between all of the different markets.
I think normally what I remember, it's median has been like the accepted standard. Sure, possible to do anything, whatever is appropriate for the specific use case, but I think just to not make confusion, it would be better to have a median.
Okay.
I think that
go ahead. I'm
it's
sorry.
really that one of the markets gets severely skewed so that one is way off what the kind of consensus is. So the median kind of gets around that issue. Whereas if you take a mean, then you're taking into account the non-congruent market.
That makes sense. Okay. I can change those to median then. Is there for the actual technical definition, is there a like a function call I can do to just say median instead of mean?
John?
You mean in like the price feed config?
Yeah, in the price feed config, yeah.
Yeah, you can just call median.
Okay. I hadn't actually read through the entire configuration to see what options were available. I tried just referring to some of the existing ones and basing it off of that. So I can do that though.
They generally look pretty good. So good job.
Thanks.
Cool. The other issue that seemed to be quite recurring was the TWAP issue. It was really Rainis that brought, Rainis just disappeared and he's back now. I was just saying the other issue that was brought up was the TWAP issue. And you had brought up a couple of those, Rainis. Would you like to speak?
Yes, so one was just in the price feed configuration that the ETH USD was not defined, but it relied on TWAP, what was inputted. This either 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever is there. So as a result, it also takes TWAP for this ETH USD, but this UMIP 6, which is referenced in implementation, it's taking spot price. So just to make this consistent with others, I believe it would be easier to take an example of UMIP 91, I believe, where this ETH USD was explicitly defined in this price feed configuration example.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at 91, so I'll have to go and look at that and see what it says.
I just ran the script with this feed, and it seems that I just couldn't reconcile when trying to calculate it manually by following implementation, and that's I think I spotted that the ETH USD is also having TWAP'd as a result.
Okay. Yeah. I can clean that up. And as far as using the 15 or 30-minute TWAP, I copy and pasted a lot of that language, so I don't. Do you guys have a suggestion of using 30 or 15, and then I can change them?
I think if you are like multiplying by spot ETH USD, then it would be better 15, because otherwise there might be some strange side effects if for some reason ETH drops significantly during that half an hour period. And I think in other case we have sticked with something between 5 and 15 minutes for such case.
Okay, I will update those to use 15-minute TWAP then.
Yep.
Excellent. The only other issue really was that there was some markets that were mentioned in the price feeds and in the configurations that you hadn't highlighted, but again, that's just a minor formatting issue. So would we say this UMIP is good to go? What conditional on corrections to median rather than mean, and TWAP corrections. Are we good with that? So that's go conditional and corrections to median rather than mean in the TWAP corrections.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent.
So then what is the deadline then for getting those changes in? Is that midnight Wednesday UTC?
As soon as possible.
Yeah, basically as soon as possible. So
okay.
Like we want to make sure the voting day this week is on Thursday at 00:00 UTC. And we try to announce which votes are going out 48 hours before then, or 24 hours before then, excuse me. So if we can get them up before then, so in the next day or so, that would be best.
Okay, I will try to address those this evening after work then.
Okay, thank you. And you can always ping me if you don't have enough time or something, and we can work through it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Excellent. That was our 4 UMIPs for this week. Is there any other issues that people want to discuss?
I guess just quickly circling back to the binary option, I could see the only situation I could see the KPI option being undecidable is if the market caps are really close and maybe there's 2 different calculations of the market cap and one is above and one is below, in which case you might not necessarily want to decide like to 0 if it's invalid or undecidable. You might want to decide to 1 because you got really close, and that seems like a reasonable way to settle it then. So when we're looking at that binary option UMIP, we might want to add the 2 variants where if it's invalid, it settles to 0, or if it's invalid, it settles to 1. And then you could choose one of those if you don't use the standard binary option where it would settle to 0.5.
Yeah, I like that. You can just pass in some sort of flag, right?
Yeah, but in this request, anybody also can like pass and ask. I am comfortable with this amount of error, right? And if it's within this error range, then return 0 or 1, or like preemptively. It's already possible to put it on question.
I think the problem is
then it's too late.
Yeah, I think the problem is like what you're returning as a voter is either 0 or 1 or 0.5, and 0.5 is what you return if it's invalid. So if you put it into the question, then I think that would add like more confusion because, I mean, you could put it into the question, I guess, but I feel like it makes it like less explicit and a little bit more confusing. where if you're like, oh, this is invalid, I do 1 because that's what the price identifier says. Although I guess that gives like a little bit more room for rewards for people that also selected 1 because they thought that it was like above the threshold. But I still, I don't know. That's a good question. My bias is towards actually putting it in the price identifier, but I guess it could be put in the ancillary data. But yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on how many use cases this binary price identifier will have. If it's just targeted for this one case, then sure. But I think the idea is to generalize it and make it possible for any similar case to use it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of limitless use cases for this price identifier, which is the cool thing. If we could just pass 1.
I actually had kind of a brainstorming question around that. I don't know if this is the right place to ask that or not, but I was trying to figure out if we could use the binary for the next UMA KPI option, because I know Clayton was talking about doing integrations based. So I was wondering if we could establish like rules for what counts as an integration and then have people vote on like, does this meet our definition of an integration within this timeline, yes or no, and sort of have like a subset of yes or no answers all returned within 1 vote. Does that make sense?
I think so. Like my understanding of like the integrations KPI option was that it like wouldn't be a binary payout. Like it'd be scaled based upon the amount of integrations that you had, right? So
yeah, I was
like
just wondering if, like the scaling could be based on just like sub-binary things, like a bunch of binary decisions that added up to a scaled payout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think we could also have like a generalized KPI options price identifier that could define like kind of the min and the max payouts that you want for your KPI options, and then like the condition that you're looking for to like scale that payout.
Yeah, that might be more simple than in not trying to use this. I just thought this was cool and I thought we could maybe use it, but it sounds like maybe just a normal UMIP would be better.
I mean, I think we should have a generalized KPI options price identifier. I think it'd be better to like reduce the scope of this one. So that, because I think it's already like complicated enough, because theoretically you could be asked like anything. But I think having KPI options price identifier that uses ancillary data would like speed up the development process of a lot of these projects and would be super beneficial. I don't know. Maybe we should start a forum post and like talk through some ideas for that, because I think you could structure this in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I would be up for that. I just figured I would pick the brains of all the smart people in the room.
We've been having some discussions as well, which is what the binary options kind of came into, around how we try and consolidate some of the UMIPs, because we're quite aware that we're getting quite a high volume of UMIPs coming through. And anything we can do really to make things easier for people to get things up and running without having to go through a complex UMIP process and a complex review process would be really helpful. So we've got quite a few things kind of in the pipeline coming through that primarily Sean is working on, that will hopefully make things a little bit easier and a little bit quicker by consolidating some of this, using auxiliary data And yeah.
Yeah, and I did on the discourse page for the binary one, I left some comments from the perspective of someone who isn't code savvy. And I don't know if those prove to be helpful or if I'm just talking about something I don't know anything about. But I thought maybe there were a couple of ways that we could make the binary one a little bit more simple as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, leave questions, leave comments, leave suggestions. We are just trying to work our way through this, and anything that we haven't thought of or anything that we could do to improve it is great.
Cool.
Hi guys, Hexy here. I have a talk with John about 2 weeks ago about delegated voting, something that could be interesting for solving the bottleneck in terms of voting rounds. Has anybody started, or if not, I can kind of get started on some of these efforts. Something that we're going to need eventually. So.
Yeah, I think that we've had like a lot of internal brainstorming too about where the bottlenecks are and where they're going to be. And so delegated voting is one of the things that came up among like a bunch of other things. I think it would be really useful. It's probably not our biggest bottleneck right now, because I think our biggest bottleneck is in the UMIP review process rather than in voting. But in the long run, I do think that is going to become like the new bottleneck once we sort out the UMIP process. But yeah, I don't think we have any clear direction on that yet. So I think it's worth like working on and looking into like how it would be interesting.
Yeah, I can kind of do that as a side efforts, not to impact your main efforts of streamlining the UMIPs review process in the next month or two.
And we're looking at all kinds of options of how we can make this process smoother. Some of them, you know, we've been implementing piecemeal. Some of them are longer term changes, and we're just trying to work out priorities and, you know, what is more for the longer term and part of a bigger change, and what are smaller things that we can implement now that will help us overcome barriers. But all suggestions are very welcome.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Anything else people would like to bring up? Cool. Well, it was nice to see you all, and thank you again for attending the community call.
Thanks, Fari.
All right, great. Thank you.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
See ya.
See y'all.
Bye, everybody.